Good morning, world. I'm Steve Rao, the host of Pod and Roku TV's World Edition. Give me 1 second so I can adjust the lighting. I apologize. I greet you live from PBS Carolina here in the station, and I want to welcome you to the show. I'm going to be leaving early today because I'm doing another show called State Lines, a new show, and I just did the PBS Black Issues Forum. But I want to welcome you to the show, and today our show will be dedicated to Ukraine, but Monday will be our Ukraine edition, as we will have a special guest from the Ukraine Association talking about the war in Ukraine and giving us his political analysis. 1 year ago today, Russia invaded Ukraine, and 1 year later, over 40 to 50,000 Ukrainian civilians are dead, hundreds of thousands of Russian and Ukrainian troops. But the 600-mile stretch of the Ukraine border remains relatively unchanged, and Russia has not been able to seize Kyiv as they initially had thought. I can tell you on a personal note, watching the 60 Minutes show about Bucha, seeing dead carcasses on the side of this roads, absolute tragedy occurring, children losing their parents, families being separated, brought tears to my eyes and really made me feel so sad for the people of Ukraine. There in North Carolina, the state where I reside and Mark Lee resides, over 21,000 Ukrainians. Many of them actually are from Dnipro, which was the rocket science capital of the former Soviet Union. And one of them, Misha Sevets, who I interviewed for an article, was at UNC studying neural networks and artificial intelligence. When we interviewed him, he said that he could hear bombs going off when he was talking to his parents. So we pray for his family and hope all of these Ukrainians in the US as well, or anywhere around the world, have family there. I could go on, but today and starting on Monday, I'm going to be here for a few minutes. I'm going to hand the show over to Mark Lee. But the bottom line is that clearly Russia has not won the war. They did not take over Kyiv. The military continues to get continued aid from the Biden administration to the tune today of another $2 billion. When it's all said and done, it's about $103 billion of aid. Europe has been united more than ever to assist the United States and Ukraine. And so we are united in our fight for freedom and democracy. At the end of the day, I will tell this to the people watching this show. Ukrainians have been resilient in their standing for democracy and freedom. But what's at play here, this morning I was asked in the news about whether the billions of dollars of aid that we are spending in Ukraine could be put to other uses in America. Yes, that is the case. But I don't think that abandoning aid to Ukraine or taking our eyes off the ball would do us any good. Clearly, what's happening here is a violation of the international rules-based system we've had in place since World War II, that a stronger, larger country could not invade a smaller, sovereign country, a free country, a democratic country. And if Ukraine loses or Russia was successful, then what would prevent China from invading Taiwan? What would prevent other dictatorships to invade other weaker countries? The entire system would be in havoc. So I think it's important for the United States, just like in World War II, that we lead these efforts, that we stay united and do what we can. I'll close out with the fact that I think our strategy needs to change in terms of how we punish Putin. Sanctions are not enough. And I think maybe an energy strategy that weans away our dependence on foreign oil, along with Western Europe, who gets 25% of their oil from Russia, and of course, India and China. As Fareed Zakaria has said on the show time and time again, the two things that have kept Russia going are oil and gas, oil and the military. But I think it's fair to say that the Russian military credibility today has been completely obliterated. Their military has just not been as strong. The troop morale is down. Maybe the Soviet Union or the former Soviet Union, now Russia, has never been as strong as it's claimed to be. So we can get them with oil. I think we're going to be in a much better position. But we want to thank the people of Ukraine for their solidarity, for their inspiration, and for a reminder that freedom is worth not only fighting for, but dying for. Long live Ukraine. Today we have with us Mark Lee, other analysts will be joining.
We've also got Lee Newton Rhodes with us, as well as Dr. Dan Worthington. So that is who we've got with us and everything.
We thank you. I'm going to take about 5 minutes. We're going to leave today. Monday will be our Ukraine edition, where we have a actually dedicated person that's going to be talking about this. But when I mentioned that, I thought of Dan Worthington when I made my remarks, because he's a veteran to our country, and you put yourself out there to fight for freedom, and I think it's important. And the question was hard for me today. Well, would I want to pull all the aid and give it to the U.S.? Yeah, if I had $100 billion and I could put it in U.S. domestic uses, I would. But I don't think abandoning what we're doing is the right thing either. So I think we got to stay committed. And I do believe that Russia will lose if we can continue. But how do we define loss? Is it not winning? Is that a loss, or is it actually getting them to retreat? I don't know.
Well, Dan may have some thoughts, but one of the things I was going to ask, and I don't know people's thoughts about this, but that's $100 billion or however much money that has been put in aid and everything. After the rebuilding of the not sure about and all in that way. So it'd be interesting to see what happens in that space. So I don't know if Lee's got some thoughts. I know that he's talked about the amount of aid that we have given, and it's definitely much needed aid for that country to defeat the tyranny of what Russia is doing. So I'm not arguing about what's going on with the amount of money that is being poured in and all along those lines. So I don't know if anybody has any thoughts around that. I was actually surprised by some of the countries that decided to vote against what's going on in the whole situation of the Russian-Ukrainian war, because one of them actually faces their own world war and everything, because one of those countries that voted against it is Eritrea, and my dad actually spent the time teaching in Eritrea for a minute, so I do know that Eritrea is very much of a country that has been at war with Ethiopia for a number of years, but I also know that they are getting support from Russia, so that's probably why they voted in terms of opposing the declaration, because the 6 countries were Belarus, North Korea, Syria, Eritrea, Mali, and Nicaragua. So definitely not overly surprised by some of those, but there were also quite a few countries that decided to abstain. And of course, China was one of those. I think India was one as well. A number of countries that decided to abstain. It was like,
is that on my end, guys?
Excuse me?
Is that on my end? I don't know what noise that is. I apologize.
Steve, it's not you or me, because we both muted and it still came through.
Yeah. Okay. Was it Dan?
Well, I don't know whether it's... Well, guys, I'm going to leave early. I'm going to let you guys talk about Ukraine, talk about the train derailment, what's going on there, winter storm coming in. I'm going to get ready for my next show, but I will be back on Monday for our Ukraine edition. So we're moving that to Monday. I want to thank you all for being with us. I'll end with this. Whatever you can do, go to UNICEF, go to Red Cross, try to donate some money to Ukraine, pray for Ukraine. Today, let's remember what they're doing over there. Let's pray for their families and pray for any Ukrainians. And Sasha Starr is not here today. Hopefully he'll be here on Monday for our Ukrainian show edition of World Edition. So thank you all so much. Be safe wherever you're. I'll try to chime back in, but I got to go get ready for a live show here in 40 minutes.
Sounds good.
Thank you, guys.
Yep. Lee, what is your thoughts? Because I know one of the things people have been talking about have been these sanctions and all along those lines. So what is your thoughts? Is it something that we need to be considering is sanctions or something like that? I know that there were some additional sanctions and we need even more sanctions.
I know the sanctions is going to work because who's doing the sanctioning? The United States, but everyone else is still participating, still trading with Russia. Europe's trading with Russia. I don't understand. Like, it doesn't make any sense. It's like, Mark, it's like you recycling, but Dan and I, just littering, what good is your recycling?
Right. I mean, yeah, if everybody else is not doing it, what is the purpose behind it and all along those lines? So, yeah, that's one of the questions that folks are going to be asking is how effective is it and how can it be made more effective in that sense?
The UN needs to get either on board or not. All the countries together en masse, not just one or two. I don't understand. And in terms of supporting this, I think it's extremely irresponsible, and it does a disservice to the taxpayers to give Ukraine, as good of a cause it may be, an open checkbook with no accountability, with no end in sight. Do we not have limits? Do we not have control over this money?
Yeah, we've talked about that before, especially with their history of corruption. And the other thing that, I think everybody's sort of glossing over is the fact that Ukraine really doesn't have a democracy right now. They're living under basically martial law. And, so in the United States, when we fought for liberty and freedom and defended the country and defended other countries against aggressors, we didn't suspend the rights of habeas corpus and other constitutional rights in this country. We didn't restrict the freedom of the press or do anything else like Zelensky has, right? So it's not really the same thing.
And in all fairness, Dan, we did during the so-called pandemic. We restricted a lot of normal rights that we had.
Oh yeah, but nobody really agreed to that, right? And it was never officially done. It was unofficially done, and it was in cooperation with the media and social media and the FBI and them conspiring to sanction.
And it wasn't forced. Yeah, it was enforced.
No, you're right, but it was an unconstitutional actions by government officials in concert with corporate people that affected our rights. And the biggest problem was it was a single political party or point of view that was being censored, that of conservative voices and patriot Americans, rather than these bunch of sissy liberal purse snatching, luggage snatching weirdos that happen to be on the other side. Right?
That is a strange story.
Yeah, I know, and it's just gotten crazy stupid, right? All right, so am I sorry for Ukraine? Yes. Should we be there supporting them? Probably. But should it have limits? Yes. Putin is trying to has dreams of reuniting the Soviet Union. We know what his plans are. We can't let that happen. And then on the other hand, the financial accountability and
Dan,
that kind of thing is really, really troublesome, right?
Just for clarity, you said that we should be there. They're not a NATO country. Does the United States have an obligation to every country in the world to be
we
the
don't
policeman?
have an obligation, legal obligation to be there, Lee, because they are not NATO. But as has been pointed out many times, it would be more expensive for us not to help them than it would be to help them long run. I mean, if the Russians were able to take over Ukraine and defeat them, it would be perilous for the world because of the resources, natural resources.
But is there no limit? I mean, Vietnam, we were in there a long time. We walked away, not saving face.
Well, Lee,
Afghanistan, we were there a long time. We walked away in embarrassment.
Lee, but we haven't. We
I'm sorry, we have another standpoint. I was going to bring in Sasha.
We've lost no troops. They're defending their country. I mean, we do have some Americans over there fighting, certainly, but they're there in a private capacity, right? And so it's like either we do or we don't. And I think it's better that we help them, like Sasha has said. There is a balance, though. I'm not as crazy as Sasha about this. There has to, because I'm not a nationalist, and Sasha is, and it's okay. He's got his view, I've got mine, and so there has to be a balance to this. There also needs to be responsibility and accountability, and I don't think that's there. That's principally my problem. Plus the fact that to suspended all rights to the people, free press, other things, there really is troublesome. I think that's really difficult because they don't really have a true democracy right now. They have a dictatorship.
Dan, may I add something to that? What worries you worries not only you, but it worries a lot of people, including myself.
Sure.
When I heard the first programs a few months ago that there might be some corruption in using American funds and so on, I started to dig into it. And you know who first discovered that? Ukrainian journalists. They themselves uncovered this certain improprieties and so on. And now when United States sends their delegation, both Republicans and Democrats, to go through over all books, procedures, everything, how that helps arise, how it's administered, and so on. So far, they haven't found any improprieties.
Oh, sure. They're not gonna find it.
Why not? They can ask any questions. They can see any documents, procurements. Okay, here cash comes. There are so many, say $10 million came on what bank account. Now all the moves from that bank account to where they have access to absolutely all 100% of information. So to
they you know, they're
well, we don't know. There's
everybody's
some kind
perfected
of
this art
a
of
corruption.
concealing funds.
Doesn't make
Biden's
sense.
are great at it. You know, Clinton's were really good at it. Zelensky is really good at it. I mean, you know, everybody's good. I mean, you have these international bankers that are in cahoots with them. Everybody's there to, I mean, they make money hand over fist. Don't get me wrong. There are also some, you know, arms and other things that are being provided to the troops. But you don't think Zelensky has an offshore Swiss bank account getting fatter off this, then I think you're very naive.
I'll tell you about Zelensky is that before the war, even before he became president, he was incredibly wealthy man worth hundreds of millions of dollars. He used to have a couple of apartments in Miami Beach area in very posh presidential areas. He sold them all when he became president of Ukraine. To tell you the truth,
And therefore,
therefore, I'm thinking about the fact that to insist on the fact that Zelensky, among others, is a criminal and he's shoveling the money in his bank short account or so on. This is same talk. It reminds me what Republicans are talking about stolen election and so on. No proof, but just keep talking.
Well, I mean, you know, he's no different than Biden.
No proof is
right?
required. So,
Sasha?
anybody has
No.
proves that Ukrainian embezzled
I
money.
just want to make sure I understood what you said.
Talking. Well, they embezzled money. Well, there is a corruption. Oh, blah, 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 blah. It's a typical Republican Fox News talk.
Well, and it's a typical
Those are
Ukrainian, you know, patriot that you are, that would be taking the position you are, and anything, and really demonizing anything that stands in your way of your view. And so, you know, your perspective is colored by your desire to support Ukrainian at all costs. Zelensky is corrupt. We know that. Everybody knows it.
Stop right here, Dan. You're much more responsible for your words than anybody here on a panel. You're really top-notch professional. You have certain designations. Please respond. How do you know? And you are saying in the open air that Zelensky is what is he, a crook, a criminal?
No, he's not a crook or criminal. He's just like the rest of the politicians in the world.
The rest of politicians. Okay, explore it, please. Show me some proof.
What do you mean? Show you some proof? I mean, just
you
Sasha,
are talking.
all the money.
Dan, it's not that you just woke up and you said, "Oh, wait a moment, Zelensky. Well, he's
okay, Sasha. I don't
somewhere on the Fox News."
Sasha,
so you're repeating here.
You are
Fox News
an
propaganda. What
international
else are you trying to
investment
say?
advisor. You know perfectly well how the World Monetary Fund and IMF work. You know how the bond market in Euroclear and all that works in Europe. You know how all those.
It's not concerning the wartime. It's not concerning the wartime when a country is fighting for its survival. And you are repeating Fox News lies, propaganda. It just doesn't make any sense.
You know, the Clintons were involved in that in a heavy way because they were given access to it. Zelensky and the rest of the politicians in the world are part of that happy family of corruption and
No,
using the World
totally
Banks and
disagree.
creating wealth
No
and
proof
that kind of thing.
except Fox News propaganda and lies.
It's not
Then,
Fox
why
News
are you in
propaganda.
your
I've never heard
position
Fox News
allow
talk
yourself
about
to
the
repeat
oil
Fox
or
News
the bond
lies and
or the bond
propaganda? I'm surprised.
business in
You're really
Europe
surprising
and
me.
in London and in Europe. I've never heard them talk about how these quote unquote projects work. You know, in the debate between Clinton and Trump, Clinton did mention that she shut up real quick after she realized she slipped. Oh, we'll just write a project for that. Well, because what you can make money by writing these quote unquote projects that are quote unquote underwritten and funded by the World Bank and the IMF and in conjunction with the large
And what it has to
international
do
banks.
is your assertions that Zelensky is involved in this so-called project.
All of the
How
politicians.
No, Dan, please,
involved in
you're
this.
talking about like a
They're
little simple
given
man
access
on
through
a
the United
bazaar, you
Nations.
know.
It's how it works.
No,
I mean,
Dan,
you know,
it
I
doesn't.
happen to know because I have been involved in those programs tangentially myself.
Okay, what it has to do with Zelensky, who is a president of a fighting country, who sacrificed tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands, of the lives of their citizens to protect
Listen,
Western
there
democracy.
is no
Why
doubt
are you
that the
repeating
people in
this
Ukraine
unproven
are suffering.
facts,
And
lies,
and
propaganda?
Zelensky
And
puffs his
it
chest
doesn't
and
make
goes
any
in front of the
sense. Come on.
cameras and
I
makes his
highly
position and that
respect
kind of
you,
thing.
but in that case,
I
I must
have
say
to
that
honor
I'm
people
really,
who are
really
fighting
surprised
Ukraine.
by what you.
I am supportive of
I'm very
providing them arms. I'm just telling you,
No,
your
Dan,
president's corrupt.
that
And
doesn't
so,
cut it.
you know, I mean, you
It
can
doesn't
talk as
cut it.
much as you
And
want.
even that you support
I
them,
think
you all know
history is going to prove me right.
75% of
You know,
Republicans
Biden has
don't
already been
support
caught
that.
with
They want to stop any help to
right?
Ukraine.
So,
We know
I mean,
that.
we
So
can
you
talk
can
over
repeat,
each other
I
all you
support it,
want
I
and let
support
everybody
it.
kind of listen
Your
to you
party
talk
doesn't support
and
it.
me
We
talk.
know that. But
You
it
know,
doesn't matter
you
anymore
keep
because it's
saying
you see,
that the
Republican
Republicans are
Party
so
today
against
is a
Ukraine. If they were
pathetic
against Ukraine,
entity. It
the
has
U.S.
no
wouldn't be
program,
funding
it has no
Ukraine
vision,
right now.
it has no people, it
So
has no
that's the
speakers.
point I'm trying
So
to
if
make.
you take Biden's speech in Warsaw, for example, no Republican Party has even one person, just one, who can do even close to what Biden did in Warsaw. And by the way, in Kiev, but Warsaw is even more substantial.
Oh yeah, you know, you're really a pro-Biden guy,
corrupt.
Sasha, aren't you?
Keep your Trump.
You love Biden.
And
Well,
you
you know,
lose another
what you
level.
might want to do is change your citizenship. Come over here so you can be a freaking Democrat and join
No,
those. The
I have my own
crazy-minded
problems here in
liberals,
Canada.
right?
There is somebody with the name Trudeau who
Oh, Canada!
is
Oh,
absolutely
Canada!
horrible.
Yeah, I
So
mean,
I
you know,
like
so
Canada.
you don't. I mean, you're in Canada.
Okay.
You don't really have a dog in the fight. I mean, really,
What do you
honestly.
mean?
I
Do
mean,
you
you
know
love
that
Biden.
today there are celebrations
Your dog
and
in the
demonstrations
fight
all
is
over in Toronto
Ukraine.
about 1 year of the war?
That's
So
okay.
there is people are really wholeheartedly, they're sending donations, they're sending government's money, they're
Oh
helping.
yes, and I applaud that, Sasha. I'm not saying that the Ukrainians' cause is not just. It is. Russia has invaded them, right? It's just the question of how much and to what extent the U.S. should be funding this continuing aggression. Now, Lee said, compared it to the Vietnam War, it's not like the Vietnam War. It's only been a year, number one. We don't have any troops involved, but the same level of corruption and involvement by the military-industrial complex is involved. The same drivers that were driving the Vietnam War are driving our involvement in Ukraine. And so, you know, I mean, it is what it is.
That's not true. Without the White
It's not
House,
true.
without the administration, the military-industrial complex wouldn't have any.
Did you
and they wouldn't be able to
serve
supply it.
did you serve in Vietnam, Sasha?
No, I didn't.
Yeah, no. Well, I did. So I mean, you know, I mean, we know the history of Vietnam. We know the history of the wars with the United States and the long, protracted conflict that we were involved in Iraq and Afghanistan. We know the loss of the thousands of lives in the Twin Towers on 9/11. We know that America blood has been spilt over there in fighting for the freedom of those people. We know that because of the way Biden withdrew, it was a colossal bungle. And I mean, you try to defend that freaking mindless idiot.
No,
And
no,
all
no,
the time,
no,
I
I'm
don't
not doing that at
I
all.
don't get it.
I'm upset with certain Biden moves, just like you are. For example, the same withdrawal from Afghanistan or so.
And you keep applauding his speeches. He doesn't write his speeches.
He's brilliant. Just
He
admit it.
doesn't
You
write
don't
his
have
speeches.
any
Czar,
politician.
he doesn't
the
write his
Republicans
speeches.
who can
He
do
has
anything.
speechwriters who write
close
his speeches.
to it.
He
You don't-
reads from a teleprompter because if he
It
didn't,
doesn't matter.
he'd
But
be
he,
slipping down the stairs and mumbling
Okay,
to himself.
but he reads very well. So let's admit one
He
thing.
reads
Somebody
really well.
wrote a
No, that's
very
really
good
good. I
speech,
like that.
and
He reads
can
really
read
well.
very well.
Trump should have listened to more of his handlers, because if he would have, he wouldn't have stuck his foot in his mouth so many times.
Mhm.
And but Biden, he's a yes man. He follows along. He reads what he's given. He signs what he's given. He says what he's told to say, and that makes him.
How do you know? Have you listened to Fox
And-
News? Is that what they're saying to
And
you?
he's just not competent to be president anymore.
Oh, okay.
No, I don't think Trump should be running either. Because obviously that's a problem. And hell, I want Biden to live the next 2 years. I wouldn't want Kamala Harris to be president of the United States. Wouldn't that be a disaster?
she's
So
not- she's
anyway,
not the president.
I'm trying to look at this in kind of a balanced way from an American standpoint.
Okay.
You
I'll try to
are a
do this.
Ukrainian
Okay, let me help you
patriot,
with something.
and I honor
Let
you
me
for
help you
that.
with something. You mentioned all the wars, so Vietnam War, Afghanistan, Iraq, and everything else.
Vietnam,
You know,
Korean.
I started with Vietnam.
Yeah, I wasn't in Korea.
Okay.
Obviously, I'm too young.
Okay, but let me show
My
you
father-
what's the great difference
stepfather
is
was.
between all these wars and what's happening right now in Ukraine. Nobody, Vietnam or Afghanistan or Iraq and all these many countries, no one has threatened the world order. No one has threatened it. Yeah, they had some terrorists, some groups of terrorists or so on. But besides that, they didn't and they couldn't threaten the world order. Here we have Russia, who was threatening, the Russian Federation, Russian
Brovishka.
But Russia has threatening for now 6 decades, the world, not just world order, the world's existence. There was always a threat of nuclear Armageddon.
Okay, so
now you,
take a book,
together with
take a
Ukraine,
page
but
from the
Ukraine
book of our
withstand first 6-7 days of war, because everybody believed here in the States, in Europe, in all over the world, that Russia will take Kyiv in 3-4 days and all Ukraine in a week or so, and that's the end of it. That's everyone expected. Or even US.
Well, the United States knew it wouldn't happen. They'd been in there with the
No.
CIA
What
preparing
United
Ukraine
States
troops.
did, they warned Ukraine about the upcoming invasion.
Well, no, they actually provided them assistance in advance of the war.
No, it was really next to nothing. Yeah.
Yeah, no, it was.
Listen, where we are now, a year late.
We had the CIA involved. early in
You know
the
that
war.
Ukraine today gets more shipments of the weapons that it can even absorb. They're looking for places where to keep it because they're getting every day 9, 10.
I know where they can put it.
Military planes are coming to Warsaw, to Poland, close to Ukrainian border, and from them it's all being moved to Ukraine. And Ukraine is becoming by far the strongest army in Europe. Ukraine today, by the way,
Listen to yourself.
Hey, Sasha, just really quickly. It's really quickly. You raised a couple of questions that I gotta ask and everything because, well, one, I'm surprised that a group of folks that are at a certain conference. I'll get to that in a minute. But you said that nobody has disrupted the world order. There used to be this thing called colonialism and things of that nature. I would argue that in some ways, China is the new colonial power.
Oh, yeah.
Look at what they're doing in Asia. Look at what they're doing in Africa. Even look at what they're doing in the West.
But
They've been
China has
threatening
not
the world
attacked
order for a
anybody,
long time.
To my knowledge. Has China attacked anybody yet?
Yes, they
Whom?
have.
Whom they attacked?
United States. They have
Oh, I
they've
see.
Hong
attacked
Kong?
them. They have attacked them politically.
How many
They have
people they killed
attacked them
already?
economically. They have attacked them socially. They have stolen their technology. Sasha, they have been at war with the United States for a very long time, and for you to deny that is absolutely childish. I mean,
It's not a war that Russian waging against Ukraine. We are talking about different things at all. If China,
well, I mean, if you're talking about the China's ability to create new and more advanced technologies, because we give them money to expand their military industrial complex because of the imbalance of trade deficit in the United States. They're buying up our debt. They're buying up our land. I mean, they're creating a terrible insecurity between the United States and them just by a balance of assets and other things. You know, so there is this very serious problem with China. China is not stupid. They know that an invasion of the United States would result in, I mean, because what everybody has, 7 guns? United States. I have 7, and we know how to use them, right? And so it's like you want to attack the United States, you pay a very, very, very dear price because of our armed militia, our armed civilian population. Now, you passive Canadians, you don't even know how to fire a gun because you guys are up there pansy-ansying with your prime minister, who's sort of half woman, half man anyway, and you just half black, half white. You know, he doesn't even know what he is, and so we. You know,
actually, some people discovered that his real father is Fidel Castro.
Oh, well, that's probably true too. I mean, you know, who knows? I don't know. I don't know. I don't care about Trudeau. You know, you do. I mean, see, you hate him.
I have to.
That makes it's funny because you hate Trudeau and you seem to like Biden for some reason, and I don't get it because they're both of the same stripe. They both promote the same world order type of ideas, and they are in there to support. And you know, you talk about the world order. The world order isn't exactly, you know, Trump said that, you know, this idea of globalism actually weakens the sovereignty of the United States. And it's true, it does. So certain choices have to be made vis-a-vis sovereignty and globalist ideas and balance. We're not the full employment, responsible for the full employment of the world. Right? To the extent that trade deals benefit the United States and other countries, well and great. To the extent they don't, or it makes it so we're not producing the things that we need strategically in our country, then we need to look at those priorities and balance those issues. And particularly with countries that are not particularly loyal to us or are sitting on the fence, like India. You know, Steve talks about India a lot. Well, India is not exactly our friend. They're not our enemy, but they're in it for themselves. And so we have to watch out for India. They're emerging, right, as they want to be a superpower. And so you have to look at it this way, Sasha. All these countries are really in for it for themselves, right?
Okay.
Russia is, Ukraine is. You talk about Ukraine becoming the strongest military in Europe. I don't know that that's in our best interest to have them be the strongest military in in Europe, because we don't know if we can particularly trust them. Now that they need us, yes.
What makes you say such things? Just explain to me.
Okay. Well, you're a Ukrainian.
Because you're listening to Fox News? Is that why?
No.
What else?
They're another country. They care about one thing, Sasha, and that's themselves. So we're setting them up.
Every country does so.
So we're setting them up to be the replacement power for Russia. Is that what you're telling me? Is that what you want? Yes, it's what you want.
But there is
you want them to absorb other countries like Russia would.
As I said before,
yes,
Russia was threatening world war for the last 60-some years. Ukraine never threatened anybody, right? So why are
the Middle East have been fighting for thousands of years, right? And even people with the same religion, but they're different sects, so they can't stand each other. And so they fight over stupid things. And people You know how many millions of people died in the war between Iraq and Iran back in the a few decades?
It was a religious war.
It's about 20 million people died. 20 million.
And how many between England and Ireland? That was probably a lot as well.
Listen,
No,
Dan,
it wasn't really. I mean, it was local.
I can send you a link to a fantastic debate in England just recently about is our world better with religion or without? And you know, if you take most of the wars throughout the history, they were all religious wars. And the world is not much better off with religion.
They used
there are so many wars
they
that are
used
being
religion
waged.
as a pretext, Sasha. It wasn't a religious war. They used religion as a pretext. That's always the way it works.
Sometimes
Politicians are the ones that create the wars, not clergy. And it's always
Wait,
done
Dan?
only-
I'm sorry, I want to back up on Sasha for a second. I think most of the wars were not religious, they were secular. It was communism, it was Stalin. There were a lot of it in China. These were not religious wars that were killing all these people.
Well, you're talking about recent development, you're talking about 20th century, but I'm talking about...
Well, and and remember, Sasha,
years.
China did participate in the North Korean War. China did
Yes.
participate in the Vietnam War.
Yep.
China has participated in wars in the past with great aggression at the cost of many thousands of American lives. And so to say that China hasn't been an aggressor, they're perfectly capable of it.
No, talking about
That's Taiwan and Hong Kong.
Hold on a second. I got to back up on what Lee
Wars.
just said. Sasha, correct me if I'm wrong, but I know that it wasn't a religious war. But as I recall, didn't Stalin have this whole quote about religion being the opiate of the people? So in that sense, it was somewhat of a religious war, if I remember the quote correctly. But I do remember.
Well, Stalin viewed religion that way. That's why he wanted to abolish religion in the Soviet Union. He wanted the state to become God instead of God to become God.
Then it started even before Stalin came to power. It started with Lenin himself, who has said that we are atheistic state. We don't have any religion. Religion is nothing but just to like opium for the nation. And
Stalin was wrong, as we know.
Stalin continues the same line. No, listen, I'm not to defend here Stalin or Lenin.
No, I wouldn't think so. He was an idiot.
Defending. But listen, in many ways, Putin now came to the point where he is about to exceed, or maybe already exceeded, the the most horrible people in history, which are Hitler and Stalin.
Well, except he hasn't killed 20 million of his own people yet.
I'll tell you that, yes, I agree with that, but it's not just a question of math. It's a question that Putin, with the last year's invasion, he's put on the line the lives, the happiness of millions, of tens of millions, of 140 millions of Russian people. He has. So he ruins their life for the next generation, maybe even more.
Yeah, for what reason, right?
For what reason? You tell me.
There really isn't a lot to gain.
But Sasha and Dan, I do have to ask a question about that.
He gets some technology, but that's, he gets some farming capability. He just wants to expand the footprint of Russia and then the people that it controls.
But I got a question around that and everything.
He's an empire builder, right?
No, and he's definitely an empire builder. He's definitely a tyrant. There's no doubt about any of those words and everything. But one of the things I've got to ask is, I know that there is the meeting of the G20 that is going on right now, and surprisingly, Russia's at this meeting. So I'm trying to figure out if they are, definitely condemned, and they are very much condemned by all of the world. Why did we allow them to come to the G20 meeting? Because apparently, U.S. Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen condemned the illegal and unjustified war against Ukraine at a session attended by the Russian officials. And then she urged the Russian officials there to understand that their continued work for the Kremlin makes them complicit in Putin's atrocities. They bear responsibility for the lives and livelihoods being taken in Ukraine and the harm caused globally. So I guess India invited these folks over there, and there are folks that are trying to say that kind of what folks have been saying here as well, that there are other issues going on. And I know that Sasha has definitely said that this is the most important issue, but Jeremy Hunt, who is the British Treasury Secretary, said that we are pleased that there is such unity among democracies that this cannot be allowed to happen. We don't think that the job is by any means done, there is no choice between whether we focus on Ukraine or focus on other important global issues like climate change. In the end, if we don't resolve global security threats, there can be no progress on those other areas. So he's actually saying what you say, Sasha, that this is the most important issue in the world. But there are some other folks that are going, like, even at that meeting, that are talking about other issues. I think even Modi said that as countries deal with a slew of challenges in the aftermath of the pandemic, including unsustainable debt, conflict, inflation, and eroding trust in international financial institutions.
Okay, Mark, I'll help you very quickly with everything what you're trying to say. If indeed some people, a lot of people in the West, scared of Russia because of their nuclear arsenal, and there could be anytime nuclear war and wipe out everybody. So everybody's dancing around and saying a little bit here, a little bit there, although it's coming to the end. And you know why? Because the latest try to test their rocket, their missile, the so-called Sarmat. Now, Sarmat is a missile which is just named in the new name Sarmat, but it used to be Ukrainian built and developed missile, which they just renamed. But because they don't know how to do proper maintenance, that test was complete collapse. The missile didn't fly, it didn't explode, it didn't do anything at all. So, and they're not doing that very often, but they have to do now because it's about 23 years now, no, 25 years since they last tested their nuclear warheads. And because of the life of the plutonium, isotope, and uranium is 10 years and another 18 years, after which they have to be replaced. So they haven't been replaced. So for all practical reasons, Russia today is nothing. They don't have nuclear arsenal, or even if whatever they have doesn't work, or even if it does work, then chain of command will fail and Putin will press his red button, and in commands they will refuse to follow these commands. So therefore, Russia is really today, it's about 1.5% of the world economy. It's so backward. It's technologically zero. So if that's a real thing, and the West should know whether it is or not, they should just dismiss Russia, gave them ultimatum in 72 hours, move all their troops out of Ukraine, and the end of story. And if you don't, all your Kremlin and everything else will be completely in the Black Sea fleet.
Maybe that's why the Russians sent their nuclear boats out as a deterrent against that very thing, Sasha, so it could pre-position their assets and their subs in advance of any first strike capability of the United States. What do you think about that?
I don't think that they will have first strike necessarily with nuclear arsenal. They have a huge capacity for a first strike with non-nuclear weapons, which will be devastating because you see, with the nuclear, although their warheads are quite precise, but still that sort of, it's an act of unjust and inhumane act. And
that hasn't stopped him so far.
We are trying to get humane. Talking about Russia.
Yeah, Putin and humane. It just
they don't go that well. Hey, Sasha, what are your thoughts about Modi apparently using this G20 conference as a show of their economic force? Because he's saying that we should draw hope from the vibrant Indian economy, and apparently they're going to grow by a 6% annual pace this year. And he's also saying that we need to look at their digital payment technology as a model to be copied and all in that.
That's because they're still trading with Russia.
They're buying oil with 30% discount to the market price.
Yeah, they're smart.
China does the same thing, by the way.
Oh yeah, they're holding the hostages. That's how Russia is funding this whole thing, is because through sales of oil.
But then Russia is getting fraction of its normal revenue.
70%.
Just next to nothing. No, it's not only a discount. It's also the pure size of trade. It's just the volume.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
The volume is
Yeah.
not there. It's just as simple as that. And also, don't forget, okay, oil, okay, you can deliver by sea or some other ways. Now, with the gas, it's much more complicated. They need the pipelines. And all their pipelines are to Europe, to Germany. So all these pipelines are not working anymore. So now what are you going to do with your gas? You can just burn it. That's all. You cannot contain it. You have to burn. Okay? So Russia is now number one gas burner in the world. By far.
Well, then, no, there's another country that has a lot of corruption going on in its space as well, and they're actually going to go to the polls on tomorrow, Saturday, to decide who is going to be their leader. So that is the country of Nigeria. And they've said that on Saturday, up to 94 million voters, and that's Africa's most populous country and biggest economy, will cast their ballot to elect lawmakers and the president. It's the sixth election since the end of their military rule back in 1999, and apparently it's going to have a lot of logistical errors and problems that they've got to deal with, and they are saying that that country has got all kinds of challenges, including growing insecurity, a struggling economy, massive debt, deep poverty, and a corrupt political class. Hey, wait a minute. That sounds like the stuff that Dan says about the U.S.
Yeah. Wow.
Mark, tell me,
Imagine that.
Is Nigeria threatening the world order? Is Nigeria attacking?
No, they're just doing their telephone scams.
Yeah. You know what? I know personally someone who back in 90s, I think it was 95 or 96, he actually went to Nigeria on that scam from Poland. And then a few days later, he begged to send him $10,000 so he could get away from there. And his friends sent the money and he came back.
Mark, do you have any idea how the election is being run? Is it early voting, mail-in voting, absentee voting, or is it just one day show up and that's it?
I think it's just one day show up. I think it's just on that Saturday because it looks like they've got voting booths all over the place, and it'll be interesting to see whether they've got early voting or whether they had early voting and how they're doing that electronically and otherwise. So that would be very much interesting. You know, if we're saying that China is looking at a lot of different countries, I would think that whoever is in charge, that is one of the first people that they will be coming to meet with and everything. Kenya is also a power in Africa as well. So definitely, while they have their issues, to Sasha's point, I do think that they will be maybe not disrupting, but a lot of the powers that be will be coming there because there are a lot of resources there in Africa as well. As a matter of fact, on Barbara's show yesterday, she had a woman that was with the Albertine Oil and Gas Company, which is in Uganda. So there's a major Ugandan oil company that she had on her show that it was actually in Kenya and will be traveling around and trying to have different meetings with different other folks because it is a woman-run oil company that is there in Uganda that was on Barbara's show that is on the network on yesterday afternoon.
Thank you.
No problem.
Sasha,
Yeah.
you brought up Zelensky's wealth before he was president, his condos, and what's the relevancy of that? Whether in terms of whether someone's corrupt or not?
Well, normally you would associate somebody who just became a president and who has a certain thirst for material material goods and would try to amass as much as possible because, you're not president for life. You're president, say, 4 or 5 years. And after that, you may lose election and so on. So you're trying to create
Think as much as you can before
as
you're
much as you
not
can. That's
elected.
logical.
It's very common in Washington. Okay.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
That's
But when
where they go.
you are in Ukraine and you are a very wealthy person, you have anything what you want. You don't need that desire. You don't need to try to accumulate so much.
Really?
Because you already have one.
Wait a
I
second,
didn't
Dan. I'm going
suppose you
somewhere.
got wealthy to begin with.
Let's see.
Dan, I'm going somewhere with this.
Okay.
Sasha, do you give that same benefit to Trump?
Trump? What are
He
you
came in very wealthy as a president.
because of Trump, you say?
No, you're saying Zelensky didn't need to be corrupt while in office because he came in with all this wealth. I'm asking, do you give that same benefit to Trump coming in with all this wealth?
Trump was not wealthy when he came to the office. He was not wealthy. All his wealth is based on Russian oligarchs' money.
Well, except this
He hasn't made even a penny
Sasha.
himself. All his businesses went bankrupt. He was a loser, and he still is a loser, and he will be always a loser.
He's the only
That's just
former
the man.
president
That's
who
what
hasn't
he is.
got on the hasn't got on the dole with the international corporations and is making hundreds of millions of dollars through speech and other things. So, Sasha, there's just no evidence for your lame-brained analysis of Trump.
Stick to the facts, Dan.
Well, you don't need
Post-presidency.
evidence if you read all materials written about Trump. And what I would assume, even remember,
Let's look at President Obama with all his speeches, President
wait a
Clinton
second.
and all his
how you
speeches.
compare
They set up a foundation, took advantage of Euroclear
Donald
and the
Trump,
bond
you compare
market,
it to little
took
Obama?
advantage of foreign money coming in as donations and that kind of thing. I don't even know what
Do you
Obama's
remember
doing. I
as
haven't
the
really
first-
been watching it.
Do you remember
But
when
he's
Trump
become
became-
suddenly a multi-millionaire. I mean, how did that happen? He didn't really have that much when he was president. No, but Trump, no, he's not. He's actually poorer now than when he was president. So explain that to me, if you would.
Okay, let me try. You remember on our show, we had quite often a visitor with name David Johnson, who is a great learner of Trump, and he was pursuing Trump for last well over 40 years. And
Now, who's this?
David
K. Johnson,
David
Yeah.
K.
K.
the
Johnson.
Trump hater. Yeah. Oh,
Okay.
he's very
So,
biased.
So David was
don't
following
like him
Trump
at all.
for 40
I
some
think he's
years,
a liar.
and
you know,
he
my-
had personal
How do you
interviews.
really feel, Dan?
No, I
He
know.
went through all
You
available.
don't like me either.
He went through all available
That's why
public.
we don't appear on.
He went
on
to
air
all
anymore.
available public records. He wrote a lot of books on him. I read one or two maybe, and it shows very clearly. Now, very interesting.
Oh yeah, and he thinks the New York Times is fair and balanced.
Again,
This is-
let's
this
see.
is the kind of guy that believes that.
Let's see that David Johnson, that he's lying in his books and all what he wrote about.
No, he's
Trump.
not lying. He's just
Oh, he's not lying. Fine, because if he's lying,
He's
Trump
just
would sue
biased.
him a long time ago. No.
he's just biased in
We're
how
talking
he's
about
thinking.
facts. That's not bias. It's a facts. It's rather
Oh,
it
really?
happened or it didn't happen. So what he shows very clearly, he bankrupted 6 casinos in Atlantic City. How casino, which is cash positive business, can go bankrupt? It's impossible at all. But
How are the other ones doing, Sasha? How are the non-Trump casinos doing in Atlantic City?
Pretty well. I mean, I never heard that somebody would go bankrupt. They may close 1 or 2, but because of the competition or so on. But no one went bankrupt. And in the 90s, the Atlantic City was a Klondike. I was going on my trips, sometimes daily trips, sometimes for 2-3 days.
He's spending tens of thousands of dollars in the casinos every day. Just not
What
one of
is
the Trump
spending? It's a
casinos.
cash positive business. People are staying by the slot machines, by tables, and they're
Ding, ding,
pouring
ding, ding,
money
ding.
and more money and more money. You have to be complete damn idiot or a criminal to bankrupt casino, especially in the 90s in Atlantic City. So once that happened,
Tell us how you really feel.
okay, okay, this is a fact. Whether you want to dispute that, fine, not with me because it's a waste of time. So, okay, now he is spent all his money, all his father's money. He's penniless. Not only that, he's in minus 300 or 400 million dollars in minus. So no
Really?
U.S. bank would touch him. He has no business, he has no money, and he's in debts. So what's happened next?
He's still got a nice airplane.
He went bankrupt. That what is it? Trump airline, same as Trump.
No. His private airplane he still has. He still has his apartment.
Business that he was successful at. Everything he touches going all the way down and bringing all people around him down. Look at how many people are in or were in jails because of Trump. All his close advisors and lawyers.
No, I think that's probably because Democrats conspired to prosecute them, right?
So
I mean,
give a lot of credit.
All of the prosecutors were Democrats who were promoting a political agenda, right? I mean, that's what was happening. Oh, sure. And then look at somebody like General, what was it?
Michael Flynn?
Michael Flynn,
Petraeus.
yeah, and all the dirty tricks the FBI pulled on him. He was perfectly innocent and so they tried to bring him down. And right, so the dirty
Why-
tricks around
Why
that,
President Putin
those
didn't
gimmicks
have-
around that whole Russiagate thing were all false. We all know that now. The gimmicks around around the Ukrainian corruption were all false. We
We
know
don't
that.
know that, Dan.
We-
What's happened when
Actually,
Mueller
we do
report
know.
was
And we do know that Biden's son was taking corruption money
Okay.
from the
when
Ukrainians,
Mueller
from the gas
prepared his
company.
report?
We do know that
all
the
of a
Bidens have
sudden,
been taking money from
a
the Chinese.
William
We do know
Barr
that the Bidens
cut
took money
short
and
his
funded this
investigation, and
center.
he never had
at Penn,
access to money
right?
trail.
A lot of the documents who were classified were at Penn. Those monies were provided by the Chinese. Okay, so so I don't know. I guess what's worse, taking money from the Chinese, taking money from the Russians. I don't know. But we know that the Bidens took money from the Ukrainians, the Chinese, and anyone else that would give them
Has to
money.
be proven, though. Has to be proven.
Oh, it's been proven.
No, never.
Oh,
Never.
yeah.
Hold on a second. We got to get to
They've got
Sasha's Ukraine show shortly. The
Okay.
only other thing I was going to bring up really quickly, and I definitely want to hear your thoughts on
Okay.
this, but
Continue this
we
on
definitely
your-
got a minute or two to get to it, is
Bye-bye.
around the inflation.
Bye,
Because
Sasha. Have a good weekend.
US Treasury
Thank you.
Secretary Janet Yellen said on Friday that U.S. inflation is coming down, but
He
that
ran
there is
away.
more work to do to bring it in line with the Federal Reserve. I know some
Mark?
folks think we're in the middle of a
Mark?
recession.
Is this the same lady who said the inflation is only transitory?
I believe that is the same
You
lady.
can't really believe anything that Janet Yellen says.
Yeah, that is definitely what she said, and everything she definitely said that. On the lighter notes, as we get ready to end this show, and this has been another fun show. You and Dan, you and Sasha were just having way much fun going back and forth. So that was
Yeah, I know.
enjoyable television
He's-
and all of that.
he's so
But
fun.
there was some lighter notes. I did see that Colin Kaepernick was in the news for apparently directing traffic in the middle of a snowstorm. So I did see that. And
That's
apparently,
nice.
on a more serious note, Paris
Why did he do
Hilton
that? And where
is
was it?
talking about the fact that she was abused as a child and all along those lines. So I guess
Who is
it's
this?
Paris Hilton, the the
Oh, Paris.
entertainment.
Yeah.
Paris was in the news as well.
I really feel bad for her.
So you really feel bad for her?
Yeah, she's one of the richest women in the world, right?
Oh yes, definitely with
I
all
feel
that.
bad for her.
You gotta feel bad for her. And TikTok is accusing EU of keeping it in the dark over its staff phone ban. And the other thing that I was gonna bring up, and I'm sure they'll bring it up on the media show tomorrow, is the fact that Facebook is gonna have a $12 charge for you to have certain things protected by them and everything. So they're gonna add a surcharge that was added recently.
I'll just drop him.
Yeah, that's what a lot of
People
people-
just drop it. Who's going to sign up like with Twitter? Who's going to pay for that?
Yeah, I
Nobody.
think nobody's gonna pay these $12 charges or for the ones that
No.
Twitter or other people want. It's just insanity. But we're gonna
That's
get
a
on out of
stupid
here.
idea.
Yeah, it's a very stupid idea.
They
But
kill
we're
the
gonna
business
get-
model.
Who knows what that business model is, if there is a business model.
I just like it so I can see pictures of my kids and stuff. I mean,
Yeah.
you know, that's the only reason I use it.
That's how it
Yeah.
started. A lot of people, right?
Yeah.
For a lot of folks, that's how it started. But we're gonna get out of here. As Steve said, we do have two actually special guests. We have the one that'll be talking about Ukraine, and then there's also a woman that'll be coming on, I think, toward the end, that'll be talking about the history of some high achieving women in sports and all in that line. So that's what we got coming up on Monday.
Are these
So
real
we'll-
women or people? Mark, are these going to be real women or men filling in for the women?
Real women, because they're talking about like Janet
Okay.
Jordan and Jersey and some women from the basketball and other historical women throughout the course of history. But I'm sure we might get to that as well, whether that whole trans conversation, maybe that'll be part of the discussion as well. But let's get on out of here so I can get
I think
on.
they ought to create a separate league.
Yeah, and that's what a lot of folks have said. Even one of my guests one time. But right now we're going to get on out of here.